Now, hard pellets is one of the most easiest baits to fish, especially on Snake Lake commercials behind me. So in this video, I'm going to run you through the bait you're going to need, areas to fish, and how you go about targeting these fish so you can catch loads more fish on hard pellets. Now let's get stuck into what you're going to need to catch these fish. So it's really simple, but you just need a few key aspects and a few things done right to catch these fish. So first of all, I'm going to talk through my little setup I've got and what I'm trying to achieve with that. So I've just got a short kit with 11s hollowing. Now we're probably fishing for, say, some F1s today from £1 to £2, and some carp from varying from like £1 up to like £5 or £6. So a nice 11s hollow is nice and soft. It's going to cushion everything that you're going to catch. Now, mainline, I've just got 017 mainline, nice and robust, because I'm fishing with like 013, 011 hook lengths, so nice and robust mainline. Now the most important thing about this is where my back shot. I've got two little back shot there, and just depending on the wind and the position, it keeps my rig in place and keeps everything nice and still. You'll see when we plumb up that keeping the rig in position is really important. Now this leads me onto the float and the float size as well. So I'm going to be fishing with 4mm pellets today, either a 4 or 6 on the hook. So I've literally got an F1 XS and a 4x12. Now, because I'm fishing just over 2 foot, you may think, well, you might be able to get with a 4x10 there. But yeah, that might be the case. But what I'm trying to do, when I've plumbed up this line, and I'll show you what I mean when I plumb up, it's a very steep shelf across. So I want to keep everything in position, everything nice and tight. So I need a little bit heavier rig so I don't fall off that shelf and cause myself problems, and just makes them easier to catch. So F1 XS, it's 1.7mm tip, and then just a nice little fiberglass stem, black fiberglass stem. Then down, literally the shotting pattern couldn't be simpler. So I've just got a little tiny little spread bulk, just inch apart there, of number 10s, and then I've got a 4-inch hook length, and I've got a little bait band on there so I can band a 6 or a 4mm pellet, and I've got an 80-inch GPM. Now, if I do start hooking a few fish, or it gets to like the summer months where I can get away with the 16, I will do. But at the minute, it's a little bit cooler. Yes, it is bright today, but it's been cool this morning. There's a cold wind on the lake, and the fishing's a little bit slower than it will be in the prolific months of summer. So just a smaller hook just makes everything easy, and it's nice and versatile as well, that I can put a 4 or a 6mm on the band as well. So that's me rig, dead simple. A few key elements there. Now the other key elements is I like to have my float dotted down. These fish, they suck the pellet in really fast. They're really fast, aggressive fishing, especially here on commercial fisheries. I'm here at Cheshire Oaks today, so it's a fishery I've never been to, but I'm going to take my hard pellet approach and trying to catch these fish for you. So what I mean by the fish are really fast, they're going to come in numbers, they're going to feed quite fast and aggressive, so you want your float dotted to a pimple so you see everything bite. So I'm going to dot my float down, and literally I'm just going to use some bristle grease to just a little bit on top of my float so it stands out when on the water a little bit better, so I can see all them sharp indications and strike at the right bites. Now pellet wise, couldn't be simpler. I just got some fishery feed mill pellets, 4.5mm, them ones just out the shop, the 4mm feed pellets. They're a Coppins pellet, so they're quite heavy, which is ideal for this sort of fishing. They sink quite fast. And then all I've got is just a small tub here, a leftover wafter or a spikum tub. I've got some Sonia baits, hard 6mm pellets. They're for the hook only, so I've just got a couple of colours in there. I've got red and I've got normal ones. But when you see the contrast of the 4mm and then just a slightly bigger pellet, that's what I was talking about. When them fish rush in, it just makes it a lot simpler for them to pick out your hook bait, and you can catch a few fish that way, so it makes it a little bit easier for your hook bait as a target bait. Now, how you're going to feed this is either you could loose feed it, but personally for me on these venues, I like to keep everything nice and tight, nice and in a little column, like a little, probably in that sort of like area on the bottom. You've got to imagine you're fishing on that little area. When I start to plumb up, you'll see what I mean by that. I'm so particular about a little area I want to fish in, so I want to fish in like, say, a bait tub lid. So I could loose feed, but that's just going to cause liners, miss bites. It's going to spread my bait out too much. What I'm trying to achieve is get the right depth, which is really important, but then obviously feed in the correct area. So I've got two different styles of pots. I've got a medium. Now what I've done with this is I've cut some holes in, so it makes it a lot easier for my 4mm to shake out. So what I mean by this is I'll fill my pot up, and it allows me to get 2 or 3 feeds quite simply. I can turn my pot over, tap a few pellets in, tap a few pellets in, and that's really good when I'm trying to draw fish into the peg. Bait falling through the water all the time, making a lot of noise, so I can get 2 or 3 feeds. I'm not shipping in and out all the time because it is 14 metres across today, so it can be a fair distance if you're shipping in back in and out all the time. So this just helps me, enables me to get even 5 or 6 feeds if I need to cut my feeds down. But the fishing gets really good, and I feel I can get away with putting a volume of bait in, say like 10 to 12 or 15 pellets. I've just got the smaller one with a bigger hole, so this just allows one hit to feed. You can tap your bait in and you can drop your rig in. So 2 different variants of pots just enables 2 different styles of feeding. I often use this medium one when I'm sprinkling, just because it's a little bit bigger, so you can get more pellets in. So if you need to sprinkle all the time, you can do. It just saves coming back, messing around and feeding a little bit less bait. So yeah, dead simple. You couldn't be any simpler. You've just got some pellets, a nice little rig set up. Your pole pots are really important as well. So enough for waffling, let's get plumbing up, because that's one of the crucial things about this method, and then we'll get catching some fish. Now I'm just going to quickly show you about plumbing up. So roughly, when I've had a little plumb around, the shelf is about 2 foot deep. So you can see there on your depth markers, it's just over 2 foot deep. Now, this just allows me, it's like a perfect depth sort of for like hard pellets, but I just want to show you, if you come off the bank a little bit, how much it drops off. So yes, I have plumbed up this rig before, but what I'm going to look for is little areas and show you how to go about trying to plumb up the correct areas to get the most out of your hard pellet fishing. So I like a nice light plummet. You can use a heavier one, but I just feel like a 20 gram, it's not too light, which is like a 10 gram might be, but if you use a 30, it could like give you a false reading indication sometimes. It's just like a 20, it's just a nice simple one. Set the rig about 2 foot deep, well, it is 2 foot deep, and we're going to go out to our mark. So say for example, say you were coming to this venue and you knew you're catching 2 foot, you're going to look for that depth. That's why depth markers are important. So what I like to do is find out where the shelf starts and give myself a nice idea of how the lake is developing. So where the shelves are on the edge, if I'm fishing close to myself, where the middle of the canal is in the deepest part, but also in the far bank, and looking for a nice little flat area. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to start about halfway down the 14 metre section. I'm going to drop my rig in there. So as you can see, that's still not even hit the bottom. So I'm just going to push it out a little bit more. That's just hit the bottom of the slope there. So that says to me, on the 14 metre section, just before the end, it hit the bottom of the slope. So I'm just going to go to the end now with the end of my elbow, drop it in, and there, it's probably a little bit deeper, but now we've come up the shelf. So I know the shelf starts about there, so just before my 14 metre section. So if I go where I know it's going to be nice, I've got the end of the 14 in my dolly butt in my hand, just going to line it up there. Now what I want to do is I want to see what I'm actually fishing up against. So I'm going to come back a tiny bit, like a couple of inch, and it's near enough, like probably half an inch difference, which I'm not too bothered about. And if I push it a little bit further, it goes up probably, I want to say probably an inch or 2. So keep on that nice little flat area there. But it's really important to understand what's past your rig. So if you go past further up, how the shelf, what sort of angle the shelf's at, because this can really help you if, like, when you lay your rig on, you can push it up the shelf a little bit, especially when it's windy. That bait can cling onto the bottom and then make it nice and easy. So that's where we're going to fish, towards that far bank there. There's no really such like features and stuff on this lake. It's just a nice straight far bank, which makes it nice and fair. There's a little pampas grass over there, but I don't feel that's going to be the key thing. I think feeding regular is going to be the key with that one. But now, often people ask me, where do you plumb up to on your float? I like it just below the body, so probably I can see the body in full. When it hits the plummet hits the bottom, you can see the body in full like it is there. And when I relax it, maybe it's going to drop down. This because I want a bit of line on the bottom, just to helps me enable to keep my bait in position, keeps it in the area which I want it. So when them fish come in, I get that nice clean bite and I catch them straight away. So that's the plumbing up. We've got what we need rig-wise, we've got need bait-wise, so let's get a pellet on, get shipped across, and let's nail one straight away. Right, so we've gone through everything now, so we've got our rig, we've got our bait, so let's put it into practice and let's catch a few of these nice little carp and F1s on this simple tactic. So I'm going to band a nice little 6mm so it's nice and visible, and then I've already got some pellets in my pot there, but I need to put a few more in. So my pole pot, now the pole pot position is really important. I don't want it halfway down the top kit here because I need everything precise, so I'm just literally, I'm going to hold it and fish with it like that. So when my finger's flat on the top of my PTFE, my pole's right there as well. My pole pot, sorry, is right there as well. So I'm going to fill the pot up. Now, sometimes these have a little bit of surface tension on, so when you chuck a few in, a few float to the top, then as the water gets to them, they go straight to the bottom. So a little trick with that is you can dunk your pot. So what I mean by that is you just dunk your pot under the water, just the water rushes off them. It doesn't like soak the pellets, it just takes that surface tension off. So you can drop them pellets in a nice little pile, sorry. But that's what I mean. I'm quite particular with things like that. I want to keep everything nice and tight and nice and direct. So what we're going to do here now is get to a mark, and the first thing we're going to do is hold the section where I'm going to fish, line up where I'm fishing. I'm not going to worry about my rig. Just going to push my pole 2 inch forward and just tap in like 10 pellets, and then all I'm going to do is lay my float out, hold it in position where I am. When everything's straight, just going to drop it down in position. So as you can see, I've got it dotted down to sort of like a pimple, but that bristle grease, that was a quick indication, that bristle grease is in position, and this is what I mean. Them fish are going to rush into your peg straight away. Pellets are really instant, they love a bit of noise, and the fish are going to rush into your peg straight away. So you imagine now, if you fed that pot, you fed like 15 to 20 pellets in one hit, I'm not going to know what pellets are on the bottom now, so that's why the beauty of it, sprinkling, I can literally in 2 or 3 minutes time, if I feel like I need to feed again over the top, I literally can. And that's the beauty of that medium pot with the sprinkle lid. You just turn it back over so it's facing upwards, so you're not dripping pellets in all the time, just keeping your pole nice and still. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned, and I'm not really using it too much of a use, but is the dolly butt behind me. If I needed to go a little bit further, that dolly butt's a square dolly butt. Now it just keeps everything nice and still. With this sort of fishing, it's really important to fish and be nice and still with your pole. As you see, we've only got a small little area which we can actually fish on productively. That little tiny area where we've plumbed up. Don't get me wrong, it's not too small, it's probably perfect really where we want to fish, but you've got to be so precise and so accurate. So it's really important to keep everything in a nice little pile, nice little column, and just helps you. That's a little dink as well, that one. Keeps you nice in position. So when that rig settles up now, I'm going to feed a little bit bait over the top again because I've had a couple of indications there. So it might take a little bit of food to get them to eat it, but we'll get some fish in the peg, which is really important. See, just tap 4 or 5 in, next to nothing, you made a little bit of noise, they'll sink to the bottom. You can imagine them fish cruising up and down, hear that little bit of noise, come into the peg, and they'll straight away on your hook bait. Now, because you've not got a massive pile of bait there, say like a load of corn or a load of pellets or a load of ground bait, you've only got a few hard pellets. So that's the beauty of this. You need next to no bait, but you need to make your bait work for you and help you out in a certain way. So just feeding little and often is really key with this one. I know it's like a little cliche of fishing that people say, but feeding little and often is really important. So obviously at the start of your little session, it's not going to be too prolific and frantic. We've had a couple of signs of fish coming through, so all it might take is just a few more fish to come in the peg, a little bit more bait on the bottom to draw them in, and we can catch a few then, hopefully. Now, one thing I do expect as well is when I do get a bite, it's going to be quite a sharp indication. You can imagine them fish coming in and sucking that bait in quite quickly and aggressively. That's why it's important not to have too heavy of a float, but have like a float enough that's stable and it's going to show you them indications. You imagine that first indication there was really quick, whether it was just a fish swimming through it time at coincidence, but if I had a 4x10 there, I just feel like. Now, one thing that's really important is not to get too carried away with having your back shot too close to your float. With this sort of fishing, if the wind gets up a little bit more, I'll put my back shot a little bit closer to my pole tip. But as a rough idea, I probably like it probably 6 to 8 inch away from a float. Now, I've probably got a little bit longer piece of line which you'd normally have. You're trying to fish across, but it's just a nice bit where I can control my float. That's the really important things. If you can control your pole with like a 6-inch piece of line and your back shot, go ahead and do it. But I just like a little bit longer because I can keep my pole in position. And just everything's nice and relaxed. Let my float do its job. I'm not trying to move my float all the time. I'm not worried about my float. I've just got it in position. especially on these far banks of these lakes, it's really important to have that, obviously that float anchored in position. If you see, if I come back probably 6 to 8 inches, I'm going to fall off the shelf, and that's the last thing I want, because obviously I'm not going to get any bites, and I'm going to make it a lot harder to try and catch the fish, as where I need to be right anchored on that position to that far bank, just nice and precise. Now don't get me wrong, if you don't get any bites and stuff, first off, don't worry, just keep tapping them pellets in. You're not feeding loads and loads of bait, you're not going across there with a big pot. You're literally just tapping a bit of bait in and waiting for them fish to come in. So I'm going to feed again. Now the beauty of this is I can tap bait over my pot. 6 to 8 pellets that time. Now I can just leave my pole in position, leave my pole float in position and anchored over to the spot. And what this will enable me to do now is if any fish comes in my peg, I'll be able to see it. See the indication on my float. Now it is about just being nice and patient and waiting for them fish to come along that shelf and find your bait as well. That's why it's really important just to have that little sprinkle lid on at the minute. It just gives you that 3 or 4 feeds, even 5 feeds, where you don't need to come back and ship back in. Obviously you're not tight against the bank, but you're just like a nice little flat area. Now what I meant before is about pushing your rig up the shelf is, if it does get a little bit windy, I can literally just push my pole a little bit further, 2 or 3 inch, and just push that float up a little bit so my bait goes up the shelf. So what I mean by that is I can just literally cling it onto the far bank, so any fish come down, everything's nice and tight. But at the minute it's probably, there you go, there's a bite straight away just before I was going to feed. So at the minute I was just going to say it's nice and calm where we are. But if it needs to, I can literally manipulate how I want my rig to fish. Just get the fence behind me. But that was a nice little dink then. Just next to no pellets. I was just going to feed a few more pellets then. That's how simple it can be. I'll just go through it again. One thing I might try is, though, I've had a few signs, so because I've had a few signs, I'm saying this a little bit quick, but I just might swap to a 4mm just because. It's a nice fish, that is. Might swap to a 4mm just because I feel like the fish are eating my bait, but maybe the fish don't want to pick that bigger bait up yet. But I just thought you've got 2 options of hook baits there as well. So when the fish do start, that's a massive F1 that is. When the fish start feeding, sorry, look at that. You can obviously, if you fish coming in and you need a little target hook bait, I just don't feel like we need a target hook bait. I feel like we just need a bait which is fish are eating. So that's a massive F1, lovely, nice big gold one. But they're the typical stamp I'd expect to catch on sort of like your hard pellet fishing. Dead simple rig, dead effective, and sometimes up and down the country, snake lakes are all different. Some have mud lines, some have really shallow water, some have deep water. So having this hard pellet attack in your armoury is really crucial, because you can fish it in depths anything from 18 inch up until 4 foot, and that's probably going to cover you for a lot of your snake lake fishing. So I'm just going to put a 4mm in the band, and then I'm just going to literally, one thing you can do is just, there's a little lip on this, you just take it off for a bit of speed. You can just fill it up. Now remember, I'm going to dump the pot, so I'm just going to check my rig, everything's in proportion, my shot's not moved. I'm going to go again. But like I say, this can be really fast, frantic fishing, but it's just about being patient and getting them correct fish feeding your peg. You're not trying to get thousands of fish in your peg, you're just going to try to get a few fish, just enough to get a bite. So forget about my rig, tap your pellets in, probably put about 10 in that time. Hold it in position so it's right over your mark. 1, 2, 3, dropping down, and then you're fishing straight away. So now I'd expect to bite anything from now. And if it did, that'd be perfect. But what you're going to find is now we haven't got that target hook bait on, so I'm just going to see how I go about whether I can pinpoint them fish. Because we're getting a little couple of signs, and it makes sense as well, because sometimes them F1s at this time of year don't want to pick up that 6mm pellet. But if you get a couple of big carp coming in your peg, they'll pick it up with ease. So it's about understanding what's in your peg and how you go about putting what hook bait on for what sort of fish. Now, in the summer months, I wouldn't be scared as well if there was a few carp feeding to put an 8mm on, just because I feel like there's a nice big target hook bait. They're really positive as well, but then you'd have to step up your hook size and stuff for you and start doing that. But because it's early April at the minute, it's not prolific fishing, it's just nice steady away. We can play around with fishing 4s or 6s on the hook and just making the most of it. But the really important thing is to just keep nice and patient, but also keep that regular feed going in. Because what you'll often find is you'll get a pod of fish come through and you can have a quick 2 or 3, even 4 fish really quickly. And then what you might find is you might have 10 or 15 minutes where you're having to feed a couple of times, but you catch 2 or 3 fish in that time. And that's because you're trying to force someone into your peg all the time. The last thing you want to do is just sit there, oh, they've gone. Just think about, how can I get another fish in my peg? How can I tap a bit of bait? But the key is, don't do it too regular as well. So I'm not trying to contradict myself. You can't just sit there and just tap loads of bait in and drip it in all the time. You've got to give the peg chance to the fish to come in, start eating your bait, and then when that starts to happen, you can catch a few fish. But it's a great way of fishing. You see the stamp of the fish is brilliant when you catch him on this. Right, there's a bite. So what we'll do is try and get this fish in, and then what we'll do is I'll call it a day. But that's been a little guide of how to make the most of fishing with our pellets. Just keep that nice little rattle going through. Keep that bait falling through the water all the time. Get them nice little indications. Just wrap around his fin, this carp. Come up weird then. Nice little indications, nice little simple setup. Don't go too big with your hooks and your elastic. Just keep that bait falling through all the time and be nice and patient with it. We're not getting loads of signs. When we get a little indication, it's normally a clean, nice bite. That's a little telltale sign. If you are feeding a little bit too regular, sometimes you're going to get more signs than you're going to get bite sort of ratio. But nice little carp to end on. This is what we sort of come for. And the old scrap out. The beauty of these shortcuts, the fish, when they pop up nice and close, so you don't need nice long landing net. You've got a 2.5 metre monster. Nice little common to finish on. Ooh. Just get the hook out and I'll hold him up. So there we go. Probably the perfect size fish we're fishing for. So vary them hook baits up, keep that feed going in, get on the hard pellets, and you can catch great fish like this one. Dead simple attack on these commercial venues. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.